Okay, Mr. Chair.
Okay, it is 5:33, and this is the Monday, October 4th, 2021 meeting of the Architectural Review Committee of the City of Palm Springs. Mr. Newell, could we please have roll call?
Yes, Member Thompson.
Here.
Member Walsh.
Here.
Member Payline.
Here.
Member McCoy.
Here.
Member Lockyer.
Here.
Member Dozy.
Here.
Vice Chair Rotman.
Here.
And Chair Jakeway.
Here,
All members present.
thank you. Could we please have a staff report on the posting of the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Chair and committee members, the agenda was posted on Thursday, September 30th. Our meeting has been published in accordance with state law.
Thank you. Does the committee have any revisions to the agenda? I do want to point out that on the consent agenda, we do not have minutes from the last meeting yet, but we do have 2 items on the consent agenda. So does anybody on the committee have any objections or revisions to that consent agenda and our overall agenda? I don't see any. Do we have a motion to accept the agenda?
Motion to accept the agenda as published.
Okay, motion from McCoy, second from Steve.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we'll move to our first item, which is the consent calendar. Item number 1.
Mr.
Oh, I'm
Chair,
sorry. Yep.
public comment.
What did I miss?
Public comment.
Oh, right. Okay. This is a public meeting. Audience members are permitted to comment on any issue that is within this committee's purview. Comments on an item appearing on today's agenda are made at the time that that item is presented. If somebody would like to speak on an item that is not on today's agenda, you may speak now. Each speaker will have 3 minutes.
We haven't had any requests to speak, Mr. Chair, but if anyone here that is joining us in the meeting would like to speak, please unmute your microphone and identify yourself.
Okay, I think we can move forward to the agenda then. Consent calendar, item number 1. 1345 Ladera Circle LLC for a major architectural application and administrative minor application for an addition and remodel to an existing single-family home located on a hillside lot at 1345 Ladera Circle. Item number 2 is Burnham Nationwide on behalf of Sunglass Hut for a minor architectural application to modify a portion of the Block C building facade within the downtown Palm Springs specific plan located at 111 North Palm Canyon Drive. Do we have a motion to accept the consent calendar?
I thought we did this.
Is that Robert?
Yes, I'm sorry. I'll move, but I thought we did this already.
I started it, but I started too soon.
Oh, all right. Sorry. So I'll move to approve.
Second?
Second.
Second, John McCoy, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we are going to move on.
Just for the
Sorry.
record, Member Lockyer was recused from item number 1, and Member Thompson voted in his place for that item.
Okay, and as we move to the unfinished business portion of the agenda, Member Lockyer is going to recuse himself from this item number 3. May we have a staff report, please?
Yes, let me share my screen. So this is a proposed single-family residence at 775 West Chino Canyon Road. The proposed project, which is a Flannery residence, It's 5,711 square feet in size, and it's going to be constructed on a 31,363 square foot lot. The proposed lot coverage is 18.2%, with the maximum building height of 22.8 feet. It's a 2-story with a front yard setback of 10 feet. As you may recall, the ARC reviewed this project on August 30th. And at that time, the committee voted for the project to be continued. And then applicant was instructed to address the 2nd-story concerns that were raised by nearby residents. So since the October 30th meeting, the applicant has reviewed the plan. As you see the difference here between August 30th and October 4th, the applicant has reduced the size of the residence slightly and decreased the building height from 24 feet to 22.8 feet. These are the notable differences that's been made to the revised plan. The rooftop floor, as you see on the upper image circled in the dotted circle, that has been omitted. And applicant is proposing to install vertical windows as well as a clear story window on the primary elevation of the residence. The applicant is also proposing a change to the previously proposed landscape plan. Now the project includes the installation of a raised berm along the south property line, as well as the placement of boulders to create a vertical height, as well as the installation of a row of Wilson olive trees for screening. And this is just to show how the building height has been decreased. So the upper image shows what was previously proposed, and the lower image shows what's being revised for the most current plan. So the applicant is proposing to lower the grade of this the patio area that's below the 2nd-story portion. The previous elevation was 671. That's been lowered by 1 foot. And the overall building height has been reduced from 693 feet to, excuse me, this is just elevation. Measure that the top of the building is 693, and that's been decreased 91.83. The rest is all the same. I just that these are the notable changes. So based on the revision, staff finds that the revision addresses the privacy concerns that were raised by the owners of the adjacent property at 1725 North Tascan Road. And staff finds that based on the finished floor information that's been provided and the proposed elevation measured at the top of the residence, that the project will not negatively affect existing view corridors, particularly the property located at 777 West Chino Canyon Road. And the revision generally meets the architectural review criteria. However, the project still proposes a 2-story construction, and the revised plan does not fully meet the hillside review criteria. For these reasons, the one stuck 2-story construction is not consistent with the surrounding development in the neighborhood. And 2, the site's natural topography is not adequately incorporated into the building design, more specifically the placement of the building. And for this reason, the staff recommend that the ARC recommend denial to the Planning Commission or provide comments otherwise. This concludes the staff presentation, and the applicant and staff are both available if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Noriko. Does anybody on the committee have questions of staff? Appears not. Okay, the applicant is present. They may have 10 minutes to present the project, and later on, if we need, there'll be some time for rebuttal.
All right, thank you, Chair Jakeway.
Sure, Lance.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Gotcha, yep.
Okay, thank you, Chair Jakeway and Noriko, for the update on the plan. As you can see, the primary reason for having an architectural review body is to handle things that are outside of the hillside zoning ordinance. And so today we are seeking at least a recommendation for approval from this body. What I'd like to do is just take each of you through what our design changes are and the measures we've gone through since the last time we met. So myself and the homeowner, Mike Flannery, have gone out to the site, and we've done a series of photo simulations of sight lines from the second floor. And again, the second floor are private areas. So there's a media room, home office, and there's 2 bedrooms on the second floor. The reason we still are seeking approval for this scheme is that the beauty of elevating those rooms is really the lanai space, the naturally covered lanai space that occurs underneath for indoor-outdoor living, as well as family activities. So by having this elevated second floor, obviously some views are created to the south and to the lower Coachella Valley to the southeast, and to San Jacinto to the southwest. However, what really becomes desirable is a lanai space that is under the belly of the second floor. We have, as Noriko indicated, lowered the upper floor by a foot, and then we've taken the lanai space and pushed it down an additional foot. While these feel like very modest changes to the scheme, from a massing point of view, architecturally, they help reduce the bulk and mass of the second floor and create a little bit more sheltered, intimate space underneath that second floor bar. So overall, yes, we are at the minimum setback at the front for the garage, which is some 4 or 5 feet below the property to the west. Then we step down 2 feet into the kitchen, living, dining area. Then we step down an additional foot into the lanai. Then we step down 2 feet into the guest casitas. So using the hillside ordinance and the notion that we should, or good design works with the natural topography, we are stepping consistently across the site and then elevating the second floor for those views, as well as the lanai space underneath and the indoor-outdoor living. I want to comment on a couple of things as they have to do with the second floor. The second floor is really pushed into the middle of the site. And by pushing it to the middle of the site, sight lines from adjacent properties are, obviously optimized. It has a 50-foot setback from the folks, almost 50-foot setback from the folks on the west. We're over 50 feet to the homeowners on the south, which we've been in contact with. And there was a letter that was put in the file for this project stating that the homeowners, with the addition of landscaping, some of the mitigating things that we've done are supportive of the project. There was a letter that was added today from the western neighbors that we addressed in the last meeting, talking about if we did build at the minimum setback, the amount of obstructions that they would be exposed to. So, and I think even staff agreed that there's a minimum blockage of historic views from that property. So we're well set back with the second floor. So then what it opens the committee up to are a couple of things. One is to use your discretion as professionals to say, is this good design? And so let's talk about what has been built in Palm Springs in the area. So we have Walter White in 1955 designing a home for Dr. Alexander. So a residence at 1011 West Chino. It's a class 1 historic site. It is a 2-story structure with parking on that upper level with the sloping site. And it's seen as exemplary of good design in Palm Springs. And I'm not saying this to say this home compares to the beauty of what Walter did on that site, although it's beautiful. And we believe that the home we're designing is also fitting and has a architectural character for today. I would also want to think about, one of the unsung heroes in Palm Springs, which is John Porter Clark. When John Porter Clark, the architect, designed his own home in 1939, he used a similar strategy for elevating the second floor for living, and then using the lower floor as an outdoor lanai living area. So this is not new. It's not unprecedented in the neighborhood. It's not unprecedented in Palm Springs. It is in the legacy of good design. I think what this committee will see and future committees is more and more types of residential living that involve less indoor space and more outdoor space, more usable outdoor space, shaded lanai such as this one. So we're seeking today a recommendation of approval to the Planning Commission. Obviously, staff is going to move this forward as they should and as we would request, but we respectfully request this committee take a look at the architectural character, the sensitivity to where the second floor is being placed, the stepping of the home on the site, and addressing some of the committee's concerns from the last meeting, namely some additional glass and glazing on the north of the second floor, as well as generally stepping with the site and privacy for the neighbors. So with that, I'll conclude my presentation and open it up for any questions or comments that the committee may have.
Thank you, Lance. Before we have questions for you, there's an opportunity for public comments from the audience. If anybody from the audience would like to make a comment, please give us your name and you have 3 minutes.
Ask about the.
This is Robert Mancuso. I'm on the I'm the neighbor existing to the west of this property, and I have submitted a second letter that was sent with my partner Jose to for the committee's review today. So I just wanted to make sure everyone realizes that we have sent in another letter of opposition for the proposed plan. And the proposed plan, while it addresses some of the concerns that were brought up at the last meeting, and they have lowered the roof line approximately 1.5 feet. We feel that there is an underutilization of the space of the property. The lot usable is only about 18%, and it sets a new precedent in a neighborhood of the homes that surround this neighborhood, including ours and all of the other ones in the circle of Little Tuscany, around Chino Canyon, Panorama, Leonard. None of the homes are 2-story homes. So it is our opinion that a 2-story home does not meet the conformity of our neighborhood, nor does it meet the topography of the lot. And the lot is a very large lot. It's about 1.5 times the size of most of the other lots that are around it. And it utilizes very little space on the lot. Seems like the lot would very much accommodate a beautifully designed like this house, 1-story house that would seem to conform a lot better to the surrounding properties.
Thank you, Mr. Mancuso. And I do want to let you know that staff did receive your comment letter and sent it to each of the committee members this afternoon.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Other public comment? David, do you see anybody else wanting to comment?
No, Mr. Chair.
Actually, I'd like to comment and follow my partner, Robert Mancuso, with a statement, if it's possible.
I can't quite hear you and you need to tell us your name, please.
This is Jose Quiros.
Thank you, Jose. Now we can hear you.
Okay. I'm the co-owner of 777, the property west of the parcel we're talking about, Mr. Flannery. So I was just wanted to make this statement because I know that it's not really the appropriate time to ask questions, but I do think that helping us understand what would happen in the event that the property cannot be developed as designed, specifically if they can't go as deep as intended or as proposed. It's our understanding that's been an issue. In fact, we were just talking to a contractor this past weekend saying that two of his diggers were offline for repair because they were doing digging in a similar type environment where it's densely rocked. So I think it would help us if the board could address that from a procedural perspective. What happens if they simply start the project and can't go down that deep and have to go higher? Would they come back to the board? Would the public have another opportunity to comment? Something that would help us understand the procedure would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, at this point, the applicant has a rebuttal if desired. Lance? Rebuttal to the two public comments?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So on the issue of a large site and the perception of underutilization of a large site, yeah, I don't really know where to begin with that. Good sustainable practice means touching the earth as lightly as possible, as little as possible. Good architectural practice in the hillsides wants to recognize the native fauna and flora, touching that as little as possible, optimizing on-site detention for water storage and repercolation back into the aquifer. There's so many reasons to minimize the amount of site impact for residents that, yeah, I'll leave it there. On the second issue of would we ever hit a boulder or something that was so large and unmovable that would require us to do something crazy like use something to split the rocks or move them aside. We've been building in the hillside for 20 plus years, starting with the Linsky residence up on Cielo in 2003. So we've got a lot of experience building in this area, building in the Palisades, built my own home and lived in it 9 years, just over in the Little Tuscany area. So we're well aware of the boulders that exist in the ground. And it comes out of the alluvium from the Chino cone. So it's pretty consistent that what we find, whether it's up in the Palisades or whether it's in Little Tuscany, anywhere on the Chino cone, whatever nature could push downhill with storms, nature pushed downhill. So we tend to find round boulders that are just large. We've used them in our foundations and we've moved them aside, and we try to use them for landscaping and for reincorporation into the site. So I can just tell you that having a lot of open space gives us a lot of ability to landscape, to create privacy, to create view corridors that otherwise may not be there if we're spreading out on over the entire site.
Thank you. Committee members, do we have time for questions of the applicant? Tom Dosey? You're muted, Tom.
Hi, Lance.
Tom.
I was wondering if you could walk us through, I'm looking at sheet A 0.2, and if you could kind of take us through the grading transition from, I believe to be the cul-de-sac at the lower right-hand corner of the sheet where the property line is curved. There's some contours there that have different labels on them. When you start from left to right, the numbers seem to change, but they're the same contour. And then above that is kind of your retention basin. So, and then you also have a raised berm with existing native boulders stacked with drought tolerant plant material. So if you, I looked at the sections and so forth, but I'm trying to see how that grade transitions. And if you know what, it's kind of cut off on our sheet, but it looks like lot 8, I guess, would be, is at 667.9, or, you know, just the relative grade of your proposed project to the adjacent properties.
Yeah, Tom, I'd be happy to do that. Noriko, can you pull up that sheet, please?
And one of the questions was, if you look where you have section CC, to the left of it, the contours are labeled 672, 673, then 672, but to the right of it, they go to 671, 672, 671, but it's the same contour. And it actually goes all the way down to 667, 668, 667 near the property corner. So I'm just trying to understand that relationship.
Sure, sure. Noriko, I've requested control. Can the committee see my cursor hovering over the proposed plan?
Yes.
Okay. Tom, there may be some simple contours that didn't get connected or relabeled as we were going through the idea of creating these detention areas and then doing the natural stockpiling. What our goal would be to obviously touch the site as lightly as possible, but hillside grading is not for the faint of heart. Anybody who's watched it, there's big machinery, there's activity that goes on for a couple of weeks as we get down to the over excavation area. Lots of boulders are pulled out. Our goal will be just to follow the recommendations from the geotechnical engineer and grade 5 feet outside of the perimeter of all of the footprint. So if you take the footprint, we would grade 5 feet outside of that area, not touching driveway areas with over excavation, not touching lanai areas. Obviously, the pool area would be something that would be over excavated, and then some clean fill put in prior to installing a pool. But this area that's shown as a detention area would largely be built up of native boulders, large boulders, that would be placed in and around that detention area. So it wouldn't be so much that we're digging down into unspoiled site area over there, but we would be stacking boulders and creating a boulder swale. My experience with the desert is if you put a little bit of water on it for a couple of months, it's amazing what comes back, what native material comes back. So we will have creosote, which are growing a little bit slower. We will have encelia just popping up left and right. Some of the choy and some of the other things will take time. We will be augmenting that by, in these boulder areas that we're augmenting the site with, we will be putting soil in with the boulders. So it's not just boulders hoping that something comes up through them, but there'll be strategically located soil so that that native landscape can come back. And at my own house, within 2 years, I had just an amazing, it was just amazing from what came back from nature, and the squirrels and all the other fauna that just, you know, took over the site. And you know, it's one of the beauties of leaving large natural areas untouched, is that the desert has an amazing way of coming back in and making it feel unspoiled. Tom, I don't know if I answered your question, but if there's a great bust over there, our intention is not to get near the edges here.
Okay.
You can help it. We're going to try to grade and do the majority of earthwork movement in and around the house. Obviously, there'll be stockpiling of boulders and things over there, but if we don't need to touch it, we won't.
Right. And it calls out on the plan that there would be a raised berm. What would the height of that berm be, let's say, above the adjacent cul-de-sac access street below?
So, you know, just to allay any concerns, when you say adjacent cul-de-sac offset street, that cul-de-sac is shared by a couple of homeowners. I believe they're on the call. We don't intend to access our site for anything from that side. Currently there's a gate up across that cul-de-sac. We have no intention of modifying anything in this cul-de-sac area. So if we can stay far away from this cul-de-sac, we will. And as you can see, the house is pushed significantly back from that. We're accessing off Chino Canyon Road. For all intents and purposes, that area down there, other than augmenting with mesquite trees, will not be touched. So we're trying to do as much as we can with as few disturbances to the site. The height might get up to 5 feet, 4 or 5 feet from the property line, about what one would have with a simple garden wall at the property edge. So our intention is to create this berm up to about what a property line garden wall would actually be.
Okay, thank you.
Lance, you're talking about this same berm, this boulder berm, but you're also showing 48-inch box olive trees on top of the berm. How do you accomplish both of those items?
So back to the stockpiling of soil in these in these berm boulder areas. I had the experience that I had volunteer Palo Verde coming up in a very similar boulder pile that I created at my house. And so Palo Verde will seek out those rural areas where extra water is accumulating, and at this lower reaches of the site, we may have some volunteers growing naturally. Our intention is, as we're filling in with the rocks, to create areas in there by either installing the trees early so that we can get a head start on privacy screens between us and the neighbors, or at some future date install the trees, but have the soil below the top of the berm. So the trunk of the tree would start a foot or so below the top of the berm. Could even be 2 feet below the top of the berm, or 3 feet. But
on your landscape plan, you're showing these as 48-inch box olive trees, not Palo Verdes, but olive trees.
Yeah, and that's we were making some changes at the very end of this last week, and one of the requirements from the neighbors was, can we please put a tree in that wouldn't produce excess shedding or excess flowering or other things that would be detrimental to their property. And so one of the things that we know, the mesquite tree would allow us to have very fast growing privacy where an olive naturally wouldn't. And then the mesquite, because what falls out of a mesquite tree, obviously we do get some of the, not really leaves, I don't know what you would call them, but the green plant material that falls off is the seasonal pods. Those seasonal pods are heavy. They don't tend to be blown with the wind and they tend to fall on site. So we think that the mesquite tree would be the ideal fast growing tree for creating a nice privacy screen between the two properties. Although if the committee recommended that we go with an olive or go with something else, as long as the neighbors are okay with it, we're fine.
Well, I'm just confused because I'm looking at your newest plan where it calls out olives, not mesquites. If you were to put in mesquites instead of olives, would they be the same 48-inch box?
At least, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Other questions from the committee for the applicant? Nothing else? Okay, thank you, Sean. I mean, thank you, Lance. Let's now, committee, discuss the project. My feeling is I like the architecture. They've made some good changes to some of the elements in response to our previous comments. I just have, I'm not comfortable with a full two-story house being built in this neighborhood, especially on a parcel that is so large. There are no full two-story houses that I saw in my drive through the neighborhood today. There's a number of houses that have a garage underneath where the house is on top of the garage, but then lands on the earth where the topography is sloping up. But to build a house that's just a big full-on two-story house, to me, seems inappropriate for the neighborhood. And that's not even commenting on the architectural style. I think the architecture is very nice. I just think the massing and the idea of the two-story house does not fit with the neighborhood. Any other comments? We got to have something. Robert.
Yeah, no, I think it's a very handsome house, but I agree with you, Tom, that I think the intent of the ordinance for the hillside ordinance is you have discretion for a second floor if it's in response to the site. And I just don't think, although the house does step down and does respond to the site, the slope on the site, I just don't think that the second story element is meeting that criteria. And I just don't think there's justification either it fitting in the neighborhood or it responding to the site that would justify us approving a two-story house.
Thank you. Dan?
I'm going to respectfully disagree with both of you. I've lived in this neighborhood. I lived up on Vista Drive, which is just a street up from this. There are many homes up there that do almost appear as they're two-story, and the one on El Cielo on I think the address is 1011 is a two-story. It kind of slopes up the hill, so maybe it's not two-story at one end of it, but it certainly is on the eastern end of it. And I think that it's a very attractive building. The only thing I think I would like to see is that on the west side, some of those smaller windows that run vertical in the north side, I'd like to see some of that element on the west side, just so that it's not so plain looking on that side.
Thank you. John Walsh.
Mr. Chairman, I think I would tend to agree with you. It's I'm looking for a compelling reason that one would have to go to a second story. I think the issue of shading could certainly be accomplished with a canopy or other devices to create comfortable outdoor spaces. So it's kind of hard to see how that would be a viable, necessary solution. And I think that is the way the legislation was constructed in terms of discouraging that type of thing unless it was absolutely necessary. When I look at a site like this, to me, it is of luxurious size. And actually the challenge on something like this is to get this larger landmass to make sense and the different pieces of building to work in a coordinated fashion and to get all the areas of the site kind of making sense. And so it's difficult to be empathetic with the need to go to a second story like this. And, I do read the neighboring letters always. And sometimes there are a few like very important things that you can catch in it. And I just thought it was interesting. One sentence is, more importantly, residents, we quickly realized that it just, just because they could do it didn't mean that they should do it. And I think this might be a time for just a bit of restraint in terms of size and massing, because it could be accomplished without doing that. I think that's it.
Thank you, John. Other comments?
Nothing more to add for me.
Nothing from Steve. John McCoy seems to be shaking his head. Anything from Tom Dosey?
Yeah, looking at the site and the existing topography, and again, I'm not sure exactly what the program was with Lance and Mr. Flannery, but the way the site almost slopes 15 feet diagonally, and it seems like you could create, if they're looking for views or levels of deck or terraces or any of that, you could take advantage of this lower area and the higher area without having to go to that next level or floor above by doing some work with the existing topography. I know it's tough up there because of the rocks. So I think there's some opportunities to look at that site plan.
Thank you. Do we have a motion? If there's no more comment from the committee, do we have a motion? Robert,
I move to deny.
do we have a second? Second from Steve. All in favor of denying this application, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
One opposed? Thank you very much. So that's our agenda for tonight. Thank you all. David Newell, any comments from the staff for us to be aware of?
No, Mr. Chair, we have one more meeting this month, and then in November and December, we are limited to one meeting for those months. So just, excuse me, we have two meetings in November and one meeting in December. So, so that's it.
Okay. I have no more comments. Does anybody in the committee have a comment on just things in general? Thank you all very much. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're adjourned at 6:15.
Hi, guys.